it's nice that we weren't the first customers to try and figure out how to use or leverage ProShop for metal 3D printing. There are some kind of significant differences in workflow or traceability requirements when it comes to dealing with a metal powder compared to blocks of billet material. So it was nice that we weren't the first ones, but it's also been great to have a bit of a relationship with that other ProShop customer and kind of bounce ideas and workflows off of each other and see what we're each figuring out.
Welcome to the Manufacturing Transformed podcast, where we dive deep into the world of manufacturing and uncover the transformational journeys of companies that are powered by ProShop. Get ready to explore the stories behind the machines, the people, and the innovations shaping the future of this industry. Welcome to Manufacturing Transformed. Real shops, real stories.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Manufacturing Transformed. I have a heck of a show for you today. This young man is super inspiring in what he is building, the intentionality, the forethought. It's really something else. So I got to sit down with David Bamforth of Renscott Manufacturing, just outside of Boston, and he bought his first machine when he was 21 and still in college. He actually bought it from Pearson Work Holding Products. So it was a machine they were selling back in the day. So that's a fun little twist. Yeah, from the earliest days, he was doing just really innovative things, basically having a paperless shop from day one, getting ISO and AS certified quite early in their journey. They brought on ProShop late in 2020 and have been just expanding their usage of it since. And we talked about all sorts of things, including their co-op program, which is absolutely an essential part of their growth. Really kind of neat how they structured that. So that's something to take away. The fact that they were doing their own cutting tool management, early on in the years using Airtable and Fusion libraries. Just the fact that they were doing that just indicates the types of innovation that was so important to them so early on. So I'm incredibly grateful and proud to, be kind of helping them in their journey with ProShop, helping sort of structure some of the things that they didn't even really know about because they were so young. And, I laughed so many times during this episode they just he reminds me of me, and their shop reminds me of our shop, but 20 years earlier, right? When we started it, basically knowing nothing about the industry, and we're just trying to figure out things along the way and build systems that made sense, trying to be paperless and all the things. But it's a heartwarming and really fun conversation and really inspiring. I hope you enjoy it, and let's get into it with David. David, good morning. Welcome to Manufacturing Transformed. It's good to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Nice to see you, Paul.
You too. So we saw each other at Top Shops just recently. This episode will actually come out after. We also are going to record with you on making chips for our Young Founder series. And you were just snuck in under 30, which is very cool. We've known each other for a number of years now. And let's start by having you give a little bit of your background and tell the audience about Renscott Manufacturing.
Yeah, sure. Renscott really became a manufacturing company when I was in college. So I went to Wentworth Institute of Technology in Boston. They have a really strong co-op program. And the way that their program works is you do your first co-op in the spring of your junior year. Then you have a summer semester of classes, and then you do your second co-op in the fall of your senior year. And then everyone ends up graduating in August because of the delayed schedule. Mm-hmm. And so I did my first co-op at Rolls-Royce Naval Marine, a site in Walpole, Massachusetts, where they make propeller blades for U.S. Navy destroyers and submarines and things like that. So I was there as a manufacturing engineering co-op and got to see this huge scale of manufacturing. I think the machine shop was like 120,000 square feet, and it had 5 or 6 machines in it, and it was full.
Those are big machines.
Yeah, huge gantry mills that you could drive like a semi truck through. There was 2 machines that size, a huge horizontal with maybe a 10-foot square bed. Some really, really big machines. So that's when I really kind of knew that manufacturing was the direction I wanted to go in. In high school, I'd been able to get some machining experience. In college, I did a little bit of Formula SAE and got to do some manufacturing classes. And so after that co-op experience was when I was kind of wanting to learn more about machining, dive into a bit more. I was also had a bit of an entrepreneurial, I don't know, itch that I wanted to scratch. I'd actually already started Renscott a couple years before that as a way for me to get wholesale discounts on car parts. And so I'd started the business, set up some wholesale deals with some manufacturers, and had started selling some parts. So then that summer, after that co-op at Rolls-Royce, I bought my first machine. I actually bought it from Pearson Work Holding, who I'm sure a lot of people know.
Oh, yeah.
It was a mini mill that I bought from him, and had shipped out, and found a small industrial space near school, and started kind of cutting my teeth. Started to learn how to use the machine while also in a manufacturing class learning how to use machines. So it was fun. And by the end of that, I was already a couple of steps ahead of where the class had gotten to.
You started teaching.
Yeah, exactly.
And how old were you at that point when you bought that machine?
That would have been between my junior and senior year. So I think I would have just turned 21. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
And then during that summer semester, we were supposed to start applying for our fall co-ops. But really, I wanted to just work on this business. So I actually wrote a bit of a proposal to the school around a entrepreneurship co-op, and pitched it to them. And I guess I must have done a pretty good job of writing it, because they agreed to it. So I found a teacher in the business school that was willing to be a bit of a mentor on the business side, and one in the manufacturing side who was willing to mentor some of the manufacturing parts of it. And then I got to spend a semester just working on the business, learning what our first products were going to be, learning about pricing. Originally, we were focused on building like in-house aftermarket parts. So we were building a website for that, how to price them, how to market them, how to make them. And it was really fun. Then after that finished, I went back to school for the spring term of my senior year. Found out I was going to get kicked out of that small industrial space that I was in. It was actually in Cambridge, Mass, which is well known for biotech. So it was being redeveloped for that use, and went on the hunt for a new space for the company. I was kind of hoping for something that was like 5,000 square feet, something like that, but ended up finding a building that was about 20,000 square feet.
Oh, wow.
And
That's
so
a big jump.
yeah, it was. And so Renscott ended up occupying half of that building. And then I actually started another business that occupied the other half of it. And so Renscott moved into there kind of at the end of the summer, right when I graduated. Over that summer, I had already hired the first 2 employees. And then when I graduated, a friend of mine from college joined, Tommy, who's still to this day, our VP of Ops.
Yeah.
We added a couple more machines to support the mini mill, because just one mini mill in a 10,000 square foot space wasn't much. And so we added like a Haas VF4 and a small lathe. And then pretty soon after that, maybe within a couple months, we bought our first 5-axis machine, which was a UMC 500, which we had for about a year, and then moved on to bigger and more reliable things. Then kind of right after that, COVID hit. And so things slowed down and things got pretty quiet. But we were able to kind of use that opportunity as a great opportunity for us to have time to work on the business, instead of just working in it. So we went for things like our ISO certification and AS certification. We got those kind of early, late 2020. And then pretty soon after that, we kind of saw the need to consolidate a bunch of different softwares that we have, and have an ERP system that supported those certs. So that's also when we rolled out ProShop. So I think we were a ProShop customer maybe early 2021, something along those lines. And during that time, we did a consolidation of a bunch of different softwares. We also moved from the Google Suite over to Microsoft, and that allowed us to get rid of Slack, and that allowed us to get rid of Asana and a bunch of different things that we were using, and kind of consolidate between Microsoft and ProShop. In 2020, we built a new building right next door to the existing one, and moved into there at the beginning of 23. And that's when we first actually started kind of leveraging those certifications and started working into the aerospace industry. We did some lunar rover parts,
cool.
Some satellite parts. And then at the end of that year is when we broke into the spaceflight industry, which today is kind of the primary industry that we support. We also, when we moved into that building, added metal 3D printing. So that's been a a new part of the business. We kind of look at them as two different divisions, even though they work quite closely together. But it's been a fun one that's been really growing over the past couple of years. Yeah. And so today we now occupy both of those buildings entirely. So a little over 40,000 square feet. And as of this week, I think we're up to 32 full-time employees.
Congratulations. Great.
Yeah, mostly supporting the spaceflight industry. Last year, we did some things to help us break into the defense industry. We've been ITAR for a few years. We went through the process of having a self-attested CMMC score of 110 out of 110. So we're ready for our certification, and now starting to break into the defense industry and really trying to grow that part of the business.
Amazing! What a ride! Wow.
Yeah.
So did you take over the original building? Did you get rid of the other business you had? I remember what it was, but you're using the whole building for the shop now?
Yeah, exactly. So that other business in 23 actually built a new building. And
oh, really? So that's going too?
It moved into that site. Yeah. I'm actually sitting at that company right now. I spend Thursday mornings over there. And so it's a car storage company that stores and manages collectible cars.
Oh man, that is so cool. What a life you've built for yourself, man. Good for you. This is amazing. That's incredible. Yeah. And I did just look it up. You joined us in December of 2020, December 18th,
oh, okay.
Actually, is when you signed up. So yeah. Cool. Yeah, come on. It's over 5 years now. So so you already kind of segued into kind of the next questions is what needed to change, what wasn't strong enough, what wasn't good enough, that you decided you wanted to consolidate and maybe move to ProShop. And you kind of already said supporting your certs. And was there other things about, having paper job travelers or whatever you were doing prior? Was it just kind of homegrown kind of Excel sheets, or what were you doing for managing your jobs?
Yeah. The funny thing about us, or the thing that I regularly say, is just the fact that we're a bit naive. The people who started the company didn't have experience working in other job shops. Similarly, I'm sure a lot of your customers are customers who existed for 10 or 15 years before they transferred to ProShop.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of it was us consolidating some things, but some of it was just ProShop gave us some structure for doing some things better, or starting to do things that we maybe historically hadn't done. So it allowed us to really easily have great traceability on our work orders, and be able to build really robust document packages easily. That historically would have been quite a manual process, kind of digging for certs and pulling them to create a document package. And honestly, at the time that we started with ProShop, we probably didn't have any customers who were really requiring us to deliver a significant amount of paperwork. So it really gave us the framework and the system to be ready to support those aerospace customers when we did start working with them.
Yeah, we have the gamut. Of course, there are definitely clients that have been in business for many years, and tired of their old ERP or never had one in the first place. We have a few that, bought ProShop along with like their first machine PO. Like, we're starting fresh. We want to start with a good system. When you said, you were just kind of naive, it's funny, before we hit record, I mentioned that I went up to my my alma mater and I gave a presentation, and on like the third slide, when I was talking about starting our shop right out of college, I was like, we were young and naive. That was the title of that slide.
Yep.
And I think I was 23, so a couple of years older than you. But yeah, when you are doing something that you've never done and you don't have experience in another business that does that thing, you're just like trying to figure it out as you go and doing what seems logical. And so yeah, I feel you. That's a cool story.
Yeah. And I'd say like one of the great things has been that as the company's kind of grown and matured and we've needed to get stronger in a certain area, ProShop's kind of already had a pre-existing module to support that. So I would say over the past 5 or 6 years since we've been using ProShop, our utilization of it was maybe 10% at the beginning. We're using it for basic work orders. Then over time, we've slowly used it more and more and became, probably starting to become kind of power users for it. We probably use just about every module, but like the scheduling module was something that we really only started using consistently and using to a degree that we now really trust it and rely on it just last year. So, and I would say like using the tooling module is still something that we use probably 80 or 90% of the way, but there's still probably a little bit more that we can take advantage of. And especially as our jobs become, we're seeing more reliability in like repeat jobs and consistent long-term production jobs. The utilization of those modules is becoming even more helpful or impactful.
And obviously you mentioned you're getting into, metal printing, which is a fast growing industry. And I know you've connected with another customer of ours, many times to talk about how they have kind of used ProShop to support that additive process, which is very different than a subtractive only process. So hopefully that's been useful as well.
Yeah, certainly. It's nice that we weren't the first customers to try and figure out how to use or leverage ProShop for metal 3D printing. There are some kind of significant differences in workflow or traceability requirements when it comes to dealing with a metal powder compared to blocks of billet material. So it was nice that we weren't the first ones, but it's also been great to have a bit of a relationship with that other ProShop customer and kind of bounce ideas and workflows off of each other and see what we're each figuring out for how to best utilize it.
Yeah. So for those that may not have an idea about it, can you just share a little bit about what some of the differences are with powder and traceability and mixing and reclaiming and the things that aren't things with billet?
Yeah, certainly. So on the metal 3D printing side, our raw material is metal powder, and as we print parts material, the powder ends up consumed inside of the part. It ends up being the powder gets welded into the component. But when we're done printing, there's a chamber that's full of powder with the parts inside of it, and we reclaim all that excess powder that's around the parts inside the chamber, and then we want to reuse it. But now that we've removed maybe 10 kilograms of the material in the powder that was used in the parts, we need to replenish that. And so keeping good traceability as to all the different lots that are part of powder. And there's a bunch of different methods on how to do traceability. There's a depletion method where you start with a bulk of powder and you just continue to use one lot's worth of powder and deplete it over time until you end up with the minimum amount needed to print your parts. And then you maybe recycle it or you get it recertified. You send it out to a lab and get it recertified. There's a top up method where you're topping up with maybe even multiple lots and you're mixing lots. So you end up with like maybe 3 or 4 certs of powder that go into a part. You can't really say what percentage of one lot's powder is in a part compared to another lot. So you kind of lose some traceability that way. And there's a couple of other methods too. And then there's sometimes some customer requirements as well that kind of dictate how you manage powder. Most of the large kind of defense OEMs or aerospace OEMs have their own requirements on how you manage these things. And even a more extreme industry is typically medical, where they are dictating how many times that powder can be ran through the machine as powders, especially powders like titanium that will absorb oxygen, go through the process. Over time, they'll deteriorate. So medical device companies might say that you can only use powder from when it's new out of the bottle. You can use it like 3 times, and then you have to send it off and get it recertified, or just scrap it and replace it. So it's definitely a bit of a different process than dealing with machine parts, where you just order material, it comes on a pallet, you know exactly which block of material from what lot went into this part, and you can keep much easier traceability. So kind of going through the process of determining how to use those, I think we leverage kind of the COTS module for doing some of that traceability and tracking, especially if we are doing something with combining lots. But certainly we've been able to figure out ways to leverage ProShop to kind of maintain that traceability that customers are looking for.
Yeah, that is very complex, and I had heard from others that because it's still a somewhat emerging technology, and there's really not as many standards as there might be in subtractive only for what you do with metal, and every customer has all their different requirements, and you have to abide by those, and it just the complexity just sort of exponentially expounds. So
yeah, certainly
sounds complex.
When we order billet aluminum, it's 61 T6 per an AMS spec, and it's super cut and dry exactly what we're expected to buy and put into that component. For metal 3D printing, it can really differ. There are now starting to become some AMS and ASTM specs that have been released recently that help dictate some of these things and create a standard around it. But if you work for a major defense prime, they probably don't even reference those yet because they're so new. And so they're referencing internal documents that they've created. And all these companies kind of now view that as IP. So they're not willing to change or talk to their competitors to try and create the standard. So, and one can create a big headache, but two, it creates a bit of a stickiness factor once you get into these customers as well. They've kind of gone through the process of onboarding you and supporting you through qualification and meeting those processes. So it means once they have put that investment into you, they're pretty committed to trying to make things work and working with you. So some pros.
Nice. Yeah, it's a double-edged sword there.
Yeah.
Interesting. So when COVID happened and you were coming out of it in December and you were deciding to, invest in the company and build some systems, get your certs and then get some software. How many machines and people did you approximately have at that time?
When we onboarded ProShop, I think we would have maybe been at like 2 vertical mills, 1 lathe, and maybe 1 or 2  5-axis machines. So definitely pretty early on.
Yeah. And a team similar size, probably.
Yeah, probably 5 to 7, something like that. Maybe even slightly smaller. Yeah, okay. 4 to 7, something like that.
And had you just put together kind of your own, homegrown shop, job management system with spreadsheets or forms or Word documents or whatever?
Yeah, a bit. I think we were using a couple of existing online resources. So we were using Slack for some of our internal communication. We were using, honestly, I can't even remember the name of it. I can remember one of the systems that kind of works like sticky notes. And so, yeah, we're kind of leveraging all these different tools. We're using Airtable for doing things like our tooling tracking was all done through Airtable. So all these kind of piecemeal modules that did not talk to each other at all, and none of which were made for our specific kind of use case. So yeah, it was definitely a bit of a piecemeal approach. And certainly I would say we had nothing that was really managing like QMS at those days. We weren't working with customers that required us to submit any documents or maintain traceability. But yeah, so ProShop kind of gave us a framework. And I think we did the Flying Start package too. So that helped give us a lot of the framework for a lot of the documentation as well. Even though we had already gotten our certs, we then went back and leveraged a lot of those documentations to help realign them with kind of being applicable for a machine shop. Because I would say our initial kind of documents that were written for ISO and AS cert were much more general, and the ones that ProShop had kind of pre-drafted in them helped us kind of narrow some of those documents and make them a bit more applicable for our company.
Okay, very cool. You said something interesting. You said you were using Airtable for like tracking tools. That seems like a pretty advanced thing for a shop of half a dozen people to be doing, is tracking tools. Can you just share what you're doing and why you were doing it?
Yeah, certainly. I think this was kind of a fun kind of moment in the machining world. This was at the point where John Saunders, NYC CNC, was really active with his YouTube channel. The Fusion kind of community was really strong. This was when there was like the Fusion challenges. There was also like this new Insta Machinist community that was being built. A lot of people using Fusion 360 as their CAD CAM soft system. So there was a lot of people kind of putting out ideas and concepts of how they were leveraging the tooling module within Fusion and how they were tracking things, how people were using things like standard setups or standardized tool libraries. And we were definitely really kind of involved in that and following a lot of those trends. So certainly when we bought our first 5X machine, we had a complete, CAD model of our machine with a table and fixtures, and had them parametrically modeled. So as our stock changed, we could just input a couple numbers on our stock dimensions and it would automatically adjust the size of the stock. We had a robust tool library with standard tools with maybe 10 tools that were always in the machine, another array of maybe 20 to 50 floating RTAs, as I think ProShop would call them.
Yeah.
Kind of on the shelf, but pre-assembled, ready to go with known kind of stickouts and offsets, and the tools on the shelf match their Fusion library, so we could use their simulation accurately. And then we would use Airtables as a way of tracking those tools, where we ordered them from, min-max quantities, stuff like that. So it actually ended up being quite similar in framework to some of the things that the tooling module within ProShop did. But it didn't leverage any of the things of like, oh, a repeat job comes up, what tools are being used, do we have them in stock, things like that, which were nice added gains when we moved to ProShop.
That is very cool that you were doing all that back then. And yeah, I can imagine, that community and all those forums and everything just really kind of spinning up and sharing best practices with each other. And, and as you're so, new to the industry, you're just soaking it up like a sponge, probably. You're like, oh, that's a cool idea. Let's do that too. And because even, there's, as many people know, there's still shops out there that are 20, 30 years old that are not doing what you were doing when you were, just a couple of years old, right?
Yeah.
All that tooling management and library and standards and RTA type things. So, that there was some good foresight there. That's awesome.
Yeah, certainly. And it was great kind of foundational pieces to build under the company instead of trying to do it reactively or reactively and going back and implementing those things. Trying to implement things like that once you have 10 or 20 employees is going to be really tricky. So it was nice that we had that breathing room from COVID and not being that busy with customers to be able to build a lot of these kind of foundational processes in and kind of embed them in how we do work.
You're wise beyond your years. That is something that lots of people still haven't learned. That's good.
And I would say we're still not perfect at it. I would say
no shop
probably a fixture numbers on 80% of our fixtures, definitely a lot of the custom ones, but some of our non-custom standard fixtures we probably don't track as well. At some point we can maybe get into like some of the custom APIs that we've written and custom dashboards and things like that, and how we're leveraging some of these modules more today with those.
Yeah, absolutely. So were you, I guess you kind of alluded to, all these tools you're using. Were you actually already paperless from the beginning? Just had digital tools of different kinds out at the shop floor for a work order or for inspection or whatever? Or was there some combination of each?
That's a good question. I would say we were probably completely paperless from day one. I think, especially with us all coming out of college, being younger, our computer aptitude was really strong. We were already, and kind of still to this day, our workflow is really that we have a manufacturing engineer who owns a part from CAD model all the way through first article. And even if it's a small run or really tight tolerance part, they might even manage the production of that part as well. And so in those early days, I was doing some of the programming. Tommy, now our VP of Ops, was doing some of the programming. We already had our computers next to the machine as we were working through proving things out. So it was already natural for us to collect that data or put it directly into something online or digital instead of doing anything with paper. It's always funny for us to hear about shops that are very segregated in their workflow, where they have a programmer and all that programmer does is sit in an office and program, and then a setup machinist who takes that program and sets it up, and maybe a manufacturing engineer who's helping guide that or helping guide the process and workflow. And for us, we just have manufacturing engineers who manage that whole thing, and probably creates a lot more continuity and clarity as to the different stages. But it means that manufacturing engineer, one of the things that we do is we have the desks for all of our manufacturing engineers are workbenches on wheels, and their computers are mounted, if they have a desktop, are mounted to the underside of them with a uninterrupted power supply that probably just bought off of Amazon, and their monitors are mounted to it. And so if they're working on the gropes today, they just unplug their computer, they roll it over, they plug it back in, and then they can do their programming or validate programs right next to the controller as they prove out projects. And then the next day they could roll it to another machine as they prove those out. So there's probably now 6 or 7 desks floating around our shop, and people are constantly moving from one location to another to be right next to the machine as they're working on it.
My gosh, that's so good. Gosh, it's so funny. You guys remind me of our shop so much. Just later, like we also. We're pretty much paperless from day one, but we were doing it with Excel because there wasn't Google Sheets, there wasn't Airtable, there wasn't all these things. But we had, literally like 15 or 17-inch CRT monitors, the big, massive ones at the machine. And then, we eventually had all of our manufacturing engineers or planners, desks on wheels, and they would literally move around. And that's why we have like that setting called like setup by planner or run by planner. So if you knew that manufacturing engineer planners type person was going to do the setup of the job because it's a short run or super complex or whatever, you just check the box. And then that was clear that you could see that, and it would kind of pair their schedules together that, this person is going to be occupied at this machine for this period of time. And so, do you even use that checkbox? Or you might
That's
have
a good question. I you don't know. Use it. Okay. We might.
That was the intention of it because, it sounds like we were pretty like-minded, as young shops where, it doesn't make sense for the programmer to program something and hand it off to a machinist necessarily. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But having the flexibility to do it either way and make sure it's clear to everybody and make sure the schedules are working out, that this person's here at this machine for this period of time. Yeah, I just love your story. That's so good. And again, it just kind of speaks to this, I don't know, the way of thinking that many shops don't. Like, let's put the desks on wheels so they can be right next to the machine when they need to be, right?
Yeah.
There was a LinkedIn post a few days ago. It was a picture from up high, and there was this like folding tables right next to the machines where the programmers were working. And the post was like, if your programmers aren't at the machine working on, at their desks, like, what are you doing? Right? Like, insinuating like if they work in an office, 50 feet away and can't really be there to communicate fast, like that's not an efficient way to do it. Right. So,
yeah. And it was also funny for us to kind of identify some of the bottlenecks for even kind of having that process. We at some point realized when we moved into the new building that manufacturing engineers, all of them seem to always be a bit further away from the machine than we expected. And then we realized it was just because there weren't outlets. Haas machines actually had the perk of, in their electrical cabinet, there's a hidden outlet. So if the machine's on, there's an outlet that you can plug into. So we would just plug an extension cord into that and feed it out the cabinet and have it at the front of the machine. But our larger machines, our ones from other manufacturers, don't have that. So we had our electricians come in and put some electrical drops from the ceiling. They're actually on in like a regular electrical box, but with a magnet on the back of them. So if they need to move them around, they just move it and magnetize it to the machine wherever they need it.
Oh, I love that.
And then that allowed them to be right next to the machine. And it turns out that was the bottleneck that was kind of keeping them from being able to do that. And we have like cable reels in a bunch of different places in the shop too. So if there aren't one of those outlets, they can pull a cable and bring it to where they need to be and move their desk to wherever is helpful.
So one thing that we ended up doing, because we had the same thing, either a desk there or, when we would set up like a one-piece flow workstation, around a machine, we might have, a tiny little bandsaw there. We might have, some, deburring stuff that's electric. We might have a vacuum pump that actually all of our vacuum pumps were 440 power. They were, just these Italian pumps, very high performing pumps. They're actually made for the pasta industry. So, but we had these vacuum things on wheels with chambers. And anyway, so what we ended up doing was every time we got a machine installed, we would have the electricians put this entire little module right down next to the machine with 120, 240, and 440 power, or 480 power, whatever. Every single machine had that. So it's completely flexible to plug in your vacuum pumps or, your saws or whatever it might be. There was just that wasn't a bottleneck to not have the appropriate power.
Yeah, kind of similarly, we always try to find little opportunities like that. One of the things that we have is we have some bus bars in our shop, especially on the area where our vertical mills are. And so that means any of the vertical mills we can move ourselves. We have a set of dollies and jacks, and we can just basically unplug them from the bus bar, move it to another location, plug it back in. Our airlines are kind of routed throughout the shop with just random valves everywhere that we can just reconnect a machine into. So it gives us great flexibility. We've probably moved our vertical machines I don't know, 3 times in the shop over the past 3 years. And it just gives us a great amount of flexibility. We can relevel them ourselves. So it means in a couple of days, we can easily move machines around. And we haven't done this to date, but, move a machine around if we do end up with a part that's moving from the lathe to the mill. The back of our mills are currently facing the lathe, so we could turn a mill 180 degrees and make it so there's a bit more of a U-shaped cell. So it's always great to have flexibility like that. And we also love trying to find like cool solutions. Things built for machine shops are typically really expensive and usually quite overkill. Like today, one of the things that we're constantly working on improving is just cleaning parts before they go into our quality lab, making sure that they don't have coolant and chips on them. You can buy some off the shelf cleaning machines, but honestly, none of them seem to be innovating at all. They're pretty old tech. Some of our customers dictate that you can't use ultrasonic cleaning on raw aluminum. So we're really just, basically dunking the parts in warm water and agitating them to get that coolant to dissolve. And then for drying the parts, we came across one of the big companies that makes ultrasonic cleaners and things, and they make a drying system. It's like $27,000 for this dryer. And it's a stainless steel box with some kind of forced hot air heater in it. Instead, what we've been using and developing recently is a baker's rack with the removable baking trays. You can get perforated ones of those with holes in them. And then we're using a dog grooming dryer from Amazon.
There you go.
It's like $30. That's already a heated hot air dryer, like a big hair dryer. And so we've connected that with some PVC to blast hot air up through it. And I don't know, or maybe into it $400 instead of $30,000. So yeah, we love trying to find kind of out of the box solutions like that.
Absolutely brilliant. You definitely, I can tell you have cultivated a continuous improvement culture and just innovative outside the box thinking. That is fantastic. That is what every shop needs.
Yeah. And certainly one of the most impactful things nowadays is just polymer 3D printing. We have little 3D printed widgets everywhere. We use some parts right now that have a lot of threaded holes of different sizes and some very tight tolerance, like dowel pin holes. And so we do at machine inspection of those features. And so we have these PLA printed trays that hold the thread no-go gauge, the min and max pin for each one of those threaded holes. And then you just work your way through this tray and it says the product's name and number on it, just printed right into it. And someone can easily lift that up and bring that to a different spot, but they can also clearly see if one's missing and things like that. Or we'll use it for like pre-kitting fasteners if we're doing assembly on parts. We'll pre-kit a tray, make sure that we have all the parts. And then as we're doing the assembly, we can clearly see if we forgot to put one in or not. And even just little things like our assembly area, they use some swabs sometimes for installing like grease. And so we've like little swab dispensers that we made out of PLA. All over the place are little 3D printed widgets to help make our life a little bit easier.
That was super cool. Did you ever graduate from Fusion for some of the defense stuff and being in the cloud, or what are you using for CAD, for CAM?
So maybe in 2024, we did a huge deep dive in CAM and CAD systems and what we would use. You speak right to the issue of the fact that Fusion is not ITAR compliant, or certainly not anywhere close to being CMMC. And unfortunately, they don't have an offline mode, or there's kind of a hacky way that some people use it, using an offline mode, but we really did not feel comfortable using that. And there's no way to have it kind of locally on a local server. So we started exploring different CAM and CAD options. Where we ended up lying is we used Hypermill for 5-axis and we use Esprit for turning. And then we use SolidWorks for any modeling if it's including a part. And if we're just using designing a fixture, then we'll also use Fusion in some cases if it's non-CUI kind of CAD work that we need to do, like some of those 3D printed fixtures or things like that. And so really we don't leverage Fusion much at all anymore. It's certainly not for CAM at all. And I really focused on those two. We also looked very heavily at Siemens NX. There was kind of the opportunity for Siemens to maybe basically consolidate a ton of different softwares into one. they have pretty good 5-axis cam turning for cam. They have a whole additive suite for metal 3D printing. So there were some softwares that we use on that side of the business that could have maybe been consolidated. And then obviously CAD as well. But their pricing is just extreme, magnitudes more. So it's probably something that we'll revisit again in the next couple of years to see if there are opportunities to consolidate, or maybe there's more pressure on us having something that has better PLM or traceability, or when we do end up with more complicated projects that are really running through multiple departments and they're moving from design through additive through machining into quality, and we need more kind of continuity in that and a system for tracking that, then maybe we'll revisit NX again.
Okay.
Yeah, for now,
interesting.
Hypermill is our primary milling CAM software, and then Esprit for turning. And we actually also use Esprit for our horizontals as well.
Oh, interesting. Okay. That's a good explanation. So speaking of PLM-like things and, managing files for CAD CAM or G-code or whatever, are you leveraging the sort of the ProShop Safe K-Drive kind of system?
Certainly. Yeah. Yeah. Anything that we have traceability on is managed through ProShop. So we're backing up our NC files to there, backing up CAM files to there. Any fixturing that we've designed, we back up into ProShop. And certainly the management of drawing and CAD model revisions is done through ProShop.
When a machinist needs G-code, do they go retrieve it from the G-code folder for that part number? Or
yeah, this is probably something that we're working on, is us building, maybe just kind of changing our mindset slightly to, I would say historically, if a job came back up, it was our manufacturing engineers' natural move to just go back to the CAM file and repost it. But often they would maybe find something to change, and then we would end up with finding an issue or creating an issue that didn't exist before. So certainly we're kind of transitioning to uploading NC files directly into ProShop. And when a job repeats, we're just pulling G-code and reproving out a part and rerunning it that way. That will also help allow non-manufacturing engineers to set up machines or get products running again if it's repeat. So it's definitely what we're transitioning to for cool. Kind of future as we close out projects.
Very cool. I like it. So you alluded a little while ago to the API work you're doing, and it sounds like you're doing some pretty cool stuff. I have not seen it personally yet, so I look forward to seeing that. But maybe tell us a little bit about what you're doing there.
Honestly, it might make sense to start this by first talking about co-ops. It's probably one of the big differentiators for us, and one of the things that I'm always shocked at other machine shops not leveraging more. But with myself and Tommy, and actually a lot of our employees coming from Wentworth, we all were very familiar with the co-op program and understood the value of it. And so from day one, maybe in late 2020, or certainly by 2021, we were already starting to hire co-ops. And I would say over the past 6-7 years, we've probably had maybe even close to 40 co-ops. This semester, we have 4 right now, one in quality, one in subtractive manufacturing, one in assembly, and one who's on the sales estimating side. And it's been a fantastic resource to leverage. One, you get people who are really eager to learn, obviously not being paid the same as a full-time employee who's already out of college. So they're really cost effective, and it lets you basically have a trial with someone of 3 or 4 months and get to understand how they work and whether they're a good fit for the company. And then we've had many co-ops who have done a co-op semester with us and then stayed on part-time. They come in on their days when their workload's a little bit quieter, or they'll come in the evenings, and then they'll come back for their second co-op, and then they'll stay part-time, and then eventually they'll become full-time. So today, I think we have 3 full-time employees who were college co-ops for us. And then we have 1 full-time employee who's a high school co-op for us. And we probably have another 4 or so who are maybe nearing the end of college who will likely become full-time employees. So it's a great way to build a funnel of how to attract young people and hire young people. When they become full-time employees, they're extremely effective on day one because they've already been working with ProShop. They've already understand how we work. They understand the people and the systems. And really from day one, they can be really effective employees compared to someone who's coming from another shop who has preconceived ideas of how to do things, and it maybe takes them 2 to 4 months to become an impactful employee. So it's really been an awesome thing for us to leverage and a great tool over the years, and certainly something I encourage other manufacturing companies to try and leverage more, try to partner with a local college or university or technical high school for. So one of those employees I mentioned that became a full-time employee, he was a high school co-op for us. And he was a pretty good co-op, but maybe got distracted a little bit. He was in technical high school for machining, and he was pretty good, but he wasn't standout yet. And at some point, he maybe near the end of his co-op, within the last few weeks of it, had overheard some employees talking about Chrome extensions and using Chrome extensions for ways to pull data out of ProShop. And he went, "Oh, I know how to use Chrome extensions. Like, I've created my own custom Chrome extensions for helping me make the optimal schedule in school." And we went, "Oh, okay. Like, you think you can do this?" And within a couple of days, he created this Chrome extension library that only we can access. And we were able to have all employees download these Chrome extensions. So simply in their browser, there's now just like a Renscott MFG button for them to click. And what that does or used to do was, if they had a work order page open, they could click that Chrome extension, click a button, and that would generate a label, and it would scrub the page and pull the work order number, the part number, pull whether it was ITAR or not, and label that on the labels. And then we could print those out and put them with parts to have traceability for which parts are part of which work order. And then we just kept on going with the label side of things. So we made one similarly for NCRs. So you open an NCR page and you can click on that Chrome extension, and the option appears for creating an NCR label. So those get printed on a printer that has red labels in it. It's got the NCR number, it's got the cost code, it's got great traceability, and then we can slap that label directly on the part and have really good traceability as to the status of it. And then when parts go into inspection, we have another label in there. And in that Chrome extension, this one was probably one of the cooler ones that we created. When you create that label, there's a couple different options. So it'll pull things off out of ProShop, like the part name and work order. But then you have the option of checking a box of whether this part needs a CMM check, whether it needs hand checks done to it, whether there's a constant box for making sure data has been entered into ProShop. And then there's an optional one that you can check, and then you can type in a custom operation. So maybe it's check surface finish, or maybe it's a visual check, or maybe it's a check per customer spec. So you can type that in. And then what you can also do is there's 3 checkboxes on that label. One's called first article, and then the other 2 are called IPC, in process checks. And then we have full and partial. So full IPC check is basically a first article inspection. And then partial is just inspecting like critical and major DIMs, but not checking the minor features for sampling. So basically what you can do is you can say how often you're doing a full IPC check. So you can say every 10th part. And then that work order's for 20 parts. So you tell it you're printing off 20 labels. And so the 10th and the 20th label will have a different box checked. Cool. And so we'll print all these labels. They'll be on a strip together, and we'll put them on the rack. And then as parts come in, we can put the labels on them and then clearly know, oh, this is the 10th one that came in. It's got this full check. We need to run our full inspection program on the CMM. And then next to each one of those boxes is a checkbox for someone to check off that it's been done. So a bit of a visual identifier to help tie what's happening in the physical world to what's happening in the ProShop world too. So that was an awesome one. And created great visual identification. People can see easily the status of parts and whether they've completed an operation or not. And so this kind of happened at the end of his co-op. Then a few months later, he actually graduated high school and became a full-time employee. And so he's been, I think all those labels have actually now been transferred over to leveraging the API instead of using the Chrome extension to scrub the web page. And now we're doing other things like creating dashboards around the shop. People can easily just see the status of work orders. So next to our Grobe cell is one that shows all the active work orders and how many parts have been complete on each one, and when the due dates are. And then it's got the maintenance checklist. So what's upcoming maintenance items, what's past due, what's the status of those.
And is that pulling from the equipment module, that part of it?
Yep, I believe so.
Cool.
And then we can also put on that dashboard who the cell owner is and who the cell operator is to help just enforce and create kind of a style ownership model, and make sure employees understand what they're responsible for owning. One of our customers is really strong on kind of total ownership or extreme ownership. And so visiting their facilities, we could see a lot of dashboards like this. They do some pretty extreme things on, like, they might have an assembly cell where 5 different planners are responsible for making sure subcomponents are there. And whichever one has the most that are critical bottleneck, it'll also show their photo on this and it will rank them based on who has the most outstanding things, in part to create ownership for that person, that they need to pull some moves, but also so their other teammates can go, oh, he's clearly maybe a little bit underwater. Let me reach out and see if I can support them. So kind of implementing things like that. And then in the tooling module, we actually have a Microsoft Surface that's using that API. And so then employees can just go up to that and type in a tool number, and it will tell them which drawer it's in. And then on that, they can easily click a tab and say whether they are removing that tool from the cabinet or returning one to the cabinet to help really keep our min-max levels accurate and our quantities accurate. So through that API, that means that they don't have to bring their computer over. They don't have to log into ProShop, which for us now requires a YubiKey, and they don't have to navigate to the certain tooling page or work order. Instead, they can just go to this tablet that sits right on top of our tooling cabinet and very quickly pull the tools that they need. But still maintaining kind of full traceability through ProShop on quantities and stock levels and things like that.
That is so good. In our shop, in our tool crib, we had this tiny little, like probably 8-inch screen tablet that similarly, it wasn't the API way back then, but it was like a easy check-in, check-out tool, tablet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always connected. You didn't need to log in. So you keep telling me about so many parallel things that we did like 20 years ago. So I just think that's amazing. That's so cool.
And certainly because, historically, before we were ITAR and CMMC, we might have just had another ProShop user account that was just a generic one that might have just sat there and been constantly logged in. But nowadays we can't do that. We have to make sure that, ProShop is constantly logging people out if they're inactive for a certain amount of time. And we have to do multi-factor authentication. So it becomes a little bit of a bottleneck or a little bit of friction in that process of checking out a tool. It's easy for someone to go, oh, I really just need this tool. I'm just going to pull it out of the cabinet and I'll remember later to mark it to change the quantity, and that won't happen. And so trying to remove the friction to make it as easy as possible for someone to follow the process is kind of the name of the game. Or adding friction that really forces people to have to follow the process as well. So it's kind of a dual-edged sword. Like our tooling cabinets are not organized. The top drawer might have end mills and taps and drill bits and inserts for the lathe, and it's just all mixed around. And so that means that you can't just know, okay, drawer choose where the drills are and the smallest ones are over here. So, I can't find my tool that way. Instead, you have to go through the tablet to know which drawer it is and to find the tool location. So sometimes some intentional friction is good.
Yeah. So you've embraced that sort of randomized tool ID model. Nice.
Yes, certainly. Okay. And it makes it a much easier system to maintain. It means when if the tooling cabinet is full for drill bits and you buy another one, then what do? You got to redo your whole system or get a larger cabinet or something. And the random thing just means it goes in whatever the next open drawer is, and we just keep on adding cabinets as we fill them up. So it's been a good process for that.
That's great. You mentioned being new to the industry and having ProShop have some kind of built-in workflows and concepts that you could just embrace. We even had a customer, actually they're in Massachusetts too, not far from you, that he'd been in the industry for years. He had his own shop for 10 years, but he said that installing, like learning ProShop and just understanding all the workflows was like taking a college course in how to run a machine shop. That he thought he knew really well, but there was actually a bunch of things that he conceptually was like, wow, this is actually game changing for me. And including like how we organized tools and thought about those things. And I've heard others express a similar sentiment that it just scaffolds best practices. And so it's heartwarming to hear that was beneficial for you early in the industry. And like, okay, well, these guys have kind of figured out some things, and let's do it that way. And that kind of makes sense. So That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, certainly. I think we have constantly done a good job of being a company that probably performs higher than our size would suggest. And certainly ProShop was a big impact for that. There's probably another couple resources that we use, and then obviously just the people that we have and the mindset that they have is just very professional and robust, and we're always doing things to high levels. I'll talk to other machine shop owners and they'll have 30 or 40 employees, and I'll maybe ask something like, how do you guys do mid-year reviews and end-of-year reviews? And they go, oh, we don't do those. I don't know. I tell someone if they're not doing well, and I tell someone if they're doing good, and that's about it. If someone says they're about to leave, then I'll give them a raise. And, the formality of things like that, I think we do a kind of shockingly good part of. And honestly, I think a lot of that, definitely the biggest thing is just the people that we have who are building the business and building those systems. Tommy being one of the most influential on a lot of these things. Probably the mentors that we have too are ones who have built much larger businesses and businesses that had no option other than to build kind of really robust systems like this. But certainly picking the right software and tools early on was a huge help. The HR system that we use is called Gusto.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we got extremely lucky using them. And over the years, similar to ProShop, they've also added more modules and resources. And so things like end of year reviews and mid year reviews we do through there, tracking time off. We'll do some 360 reviews, or we can get feedback from other employees on different employees as we do mid year reviews to make sure that we have kind of a holistic perspective of how employees are performing. Setting goals for employees, we can do through the goals module in there as well. So I think I could not imagine being in a company that's been around for 20 or 30 years and hasn't taken advantage of some of these great new modern systems and tools. In the past, I had a little bit of experience or insight into how paychecks used to work. And it was horrible. You had to you had a person that you had to call, and a book of checks, and you had to write them every week. And it took 3 hours to run payroll. And it's like, Gusto, I don't know, it takes us probably 30 minutes to run payroll for 30 plus employees, and that takes care of all the taxes and parts like that. So I think that's also just been a really lucky thing. And we communicate to customers the fact that we're young, our people are young, but also just our company's young. And that gives us the benefit of not having legacy systems or legacy machines. We're not using a payroll system that's 20 years old, and we're not using an ERP system that's no longer innovating or no longer supporting new features. We don't have a machine that's 30 years old that requires us to upload files with a floppy disk or anything like that. We couldn't manage, modern G code, which is probably, back in the day, a handwritten G code program might have ended up being a couple hundred lines. And now when you create it with CAM, it can easily be many tens or hundreds or millions of lines of code.
Yeah.
And so we're just lucky at the fact that we're young and everything's new or has been implemented just over the past 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. And the stuff you're doing with labels and the API is really neat. And I think I'm going to connect you with our product team after this, because I won't get in trouble for saying this, but we have a completely new sort of drag and drop label builder coming. Cool. Just WYSIWYG, just like I'm with this field here, and I'm with this picture here, and I'm with a QR code here, and you can apply them then to any module. But I'm guessing there'll be some really cool inspiration that what you guys have done that we might be able to incorporate into what we're building there. So love to have you collaborate with them. That's really neat. Let's see here. We are getting close to time. I think this has flown by. Such a fun conversation. I guess this podcast is called Manufacturing Transformed, and it's often because, a more legacy company truly goes through a transformation, right? When they get rid of all their paper and they stop doing, inspections on paper, and they now have it digital, and their QMS is all aligned, and it can be super transformational. And obviously, you guys deciding to choose a system like ProShop so early on probably wasn't as much of a true transformation. It was more an evolution of, things you were already doing that were really, really innovative. But maybe if you could just kind of reflect on, if you hadn't decided to choose, to go with ProShop, maybe if you were still using your other, the tools that you had built before, what would that look like today? Would it be super hard to manage? What would there be constraining things? Maybe just reflect on that.
Yeah. For us, it's kind of interesting. I did not have the knowledge of what it meant to be an aerospace machine shop when the business started. And ProShop kind of helped fill a lot of those gaps. It gave us clarity as to like, oh, okay, like clearly this is the way ProShop is supposed to work. And this is in order to help give the result of having material traceability for every part that we ship in case customers want those certs. And I honestly really don't know where we would be if we didn't have a tool like that helped kind of give us a structure and a framework for how to manage the work that we do. So honestly, it's like this is honestly almost like an impossible question to answer. I really don't know where we would be. Certainly, being just the idea of being a company that has a segregated QMS and ERP system sounds horrible. It is probably one of the greatest perks of having those two things integrated. And whenever we hear about an ERP system that doesn't have a QMS built in, I'm like, you're half the solution. And even though you're half, your impact's only 25% because those two things together are so much more impactful than having them separate. And so, yeah, honestly, it's like pretty hard to imagine what it would be like not having ProShop. I think kind of something similar, or a slight tangent, but similar, kind of about the podcast name. For us, one of the things that we've also kind of recognized that we do is have influence on other manufacturing companies. We're quite involved in Mass MEP, our local MEP program. Yeah. And so we've hosted a couple of events in collaboration with them and had other manufacturers come by. And we've been able to recognize, oh, actually, we're quite different from these companies. And these companies are really interested in learning about what we do and how we do it. And so for us, honestly, a lot of the great perk is our ability to help influence the manufacturing industry and help make it stronger, and how we can help change the industry or impact the industry. Actually, a little bit of our mission statement is kind of inspiring industry change as well. So I would kind of say that's probably where the larger kind of manufacturing transformation or impact is. We'll have an event like that, and then the next day get an email from someone who says, hey, our company's been around for 30 years and I've never thought about having company values. But I read your values on the wall and they really resonated with me. Would you mind sending them to me? I didn't have the time to note them down. Would you mind sending them to me so I can kind of use them as a reference to set values for our company? And similarly, seeing how we leverage 3D printing. I think a lot of people who have been in the industry for a long time hear companies talking about leveraging 3D printing, but don't really understand the applications for it. And going through our shop and seeing all these different applications for using simple 3D printing to make kind of tools to make life easier, makes them go, oh, okay, I should buy a 3D printer. And or the co-op program is a big one too, where they're like, most of them have the mindset of, oh, if I hire a co-op, I'm going to spend the entire time just teaching them and holding their hands, and they're not going to know what to do, and they're going to make mistakes, and it's just going to make my life harder than easier. Like, why would I pay someone to train them? And then they come and visit us and they go, oh, that employee's really young. Like, what are they working on? We're like, oh, that's a co-op. They've been here for 3 weeks, and right now they're CAD modeling a 3D printed fixture for holding our vacuum cleaner or something. And they go, oh, they've been here for 3 weeks and they're already like doing meaningful work. And so things like that are honestly a great part of being a younger manufacturing company and being able to share it with the industry and helping transform our business. We get to learn from them too. Obviously, they've all been able to build really successful and robust businesses with great reputations too. So I'm usually asking them questions about business development and how they got into the door at certain places and things like that. So there can be a great give and a take there as well.
That is so excellent. That is inspiring, and I appreciate you sharing that spin on it. As I mentioned, you're going to be on the Making Chips, Young Founders series here shortly. We are also starting a series. It's not publicly announced yet, but we're going to be doing a workforce development series and highlighting companies and programs that are really doing excellent workforce development. And if you would be willing, I'd love to have you on that as well, because you are, clearly building a very innovative, very Yeah, just an innovative company that is doing a lot of really cool things. I'd love to help you in your mission to impact the industry, by sharing what you're doing and inspiring others. So you've inspired me today. Thank you so much for doing this with me. If people want to learn more about Renscott or connect with you, how would you suggest they reach out?
Yeah, renscottmfg.com is the best place to go. You can contact us through there and kind of see more about what we do. We're also quite active on LinkedIn, so following us on LinkedIn just at Renscott MFG. And then we're on Instagram too. We haven't been that good at being active over the past couple of years, but certainly you can follow us on Instagram as well.
And just for those that, if you just want to plug it in yourself, it's Renscott with 2 N's. So RENNSCOT MFG.com.
Yep. 2 N's and 1 T.
2 N's and 1 T. That's right. All right, David. Well, thank you again so much. This has been an absolute awesome hour. Appreciate you sharing everything you're doing.
Yeah, no problem. I look forward to joining you on more calls in the future.